Okay, gamers, we've got a little bit of a different video on our hands today. We're having a nice, healthy conversation with Kelsey Jaffer about the current AI strike happening in the voiceover industry. And when you talk about games that we actively cover on the channel, Kelsey has been involved with several of them. There are a lot of unanswered questions and frankly a fair bit of speculation and misinformation being spread regarding the strike and projects affected by it. Kelsey's going to go over a lot of that in detail with us. We also have links in the description down below if you want to get connected with Kelsey on any of their socials. We've also got a petition you can sign, and I'm looking for various other information and informative links that we can post down there so you can get as much information as possible. Now, if you're concerned about generative AI and the effect that it is having on the entertainment industry, I encourage you to please share this video with your friends, colleagues, anyone else who may be wondering about the impact that this has as a whole. There's a lot of good conversation that happens here, and I hope you look forward to it. All right, Kelsey, hello. How are you doing?
I am good. How are you?
Doing swell. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself to everybody, give them your socials, website, anywhere you want them to connect with you.
All right. So my name is Kelsey Jaffer. I am a voice actor. Socials, I don't use a lot of them, but I am on Twitter/X very sparingly now as Kelatonin, which is melatonin with a K. And then I'm also on Blue Sky under the same name, and I don't really use Instagram, but I do stream on Twitch, also under Kelatonin. So
Perfect.
Yeah, come find me.
Perfect. We'll get all that link down below. So gamers, if you're excited to connect with Kelsey, just check the video description, maybe even the pinned comment, and you'll find it there. So we are here to talk about the strike happening right now with voice actors. So if you wouldn't mind, just give us the skinny. Why are actors on strike? And what are we awaiting before we can reach a resolution on that?
Basically, so the strike has been going on for about 100 days now at the time of recording, which is a while. But it basically started because there were 10 major video game companies that were refusing to include AI protections in their contracts with voice actors. Essentially, a similar thing to what was if people were paying attention to the on-camera SAG strikes last year. Similar thing. Companies, particularly very large and wealthy ones, were like, hey, what if we hired you for this thing? But this really exciting thing, this opportunity that you'll want to take, because it will be very good for your career. However, we're going to sneak in there like a little clause where we can do whatever we want with this recording. We can take your voice and like just synthesize it, make a model of it with AI and use it in the future. And you either, they were offering to like either give people a buyout for that or just like not, which is never enough.
What do you mean by a buyout? Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So a buyout, if they were doing it ethically, which I say that skeptically because I personally don't know that I want my voice used with AI at all.
Right.
But if they were going to do it more ethically, basically there would be a fee per usage of the person's voice model that people would get paid. Buyout is essentially like, okay, well, here's a bunch of cash, like at the start of this deal or whatever. And like, yeah, that's what you get forever. But you don't know how many times that model of their voice, licensed by one company, other companies could do the same, will be used.
So it's essentially like a royalty-free buyout rather than having to pay you royalties for every time your likeness is used. They just pay you some money up front and then never have to hire you again. I think that's probably the concern, correct?
Yeah, that is the biggest concern is that they give you, and some of these buyouts, this is more for commercial stuff, is getting a little away from video games a little bit, but some of the commercial buyouts, they'll be like, here's 50 grand. Now to like, yeah, right?
I mean,
it's like, but then you think about like, oh, say this is just an example. I don't know if they're doing this, but say a company like Google or Amazon, like a huge company along those lines, has a model of your voice and they're like, here, kid, here's $50,000. Don't spend it all in one place. But they're generating millions and millions of dollars off of your voice. So it's not fair. Right. It looks nice because it's shiny and it's right there and it's right now, but it's not fair. It's not the money that you technically should be owed. So the main concern is being replaced by models of our own voices that we have had no control over being made as like kind of a side effect of taking jobs that people really want, you know? Like it's an exciting thing, but it's like, I don't know if I can do this in an ethical way or in a way that I feel comfortable with. So 10 companies started off being struck, which means, hey, don't work for these people. These people specifically, these studios, these companies don't work for these people during the strike because they have refused time and time again. Before the strike, the bargaining committee was trying to negotiate with these companies for, I don't know if it was exactly 2 years, but like it was more than a year. And still these 10 companies were like, nope, we're not doing it. We're not going to be reasonable about AI because we just want the money.
They were negotiating for over a year prior to the strike happening. And now we've had the strike ongoing for over 100 days at the time of recording, correct?
Yes.
So we're looking at close to 2 years, possibly over, whatever the exact timeline is of this ongoing fight. And they are, it sounds like, unrelenting. From what I've seen, there doesn't appear to be a lot of progress. Is that correct?
No. Yeah,
okay.
Not really. Not yet, at least. That's the very broad gist of it. Basically, like you said, they are kind of unrelenting. They actually went back to the drawing board and came to SAG with an offer that was like worse than the first offer. And SAG was like, what are we doing? The thought is they're probably just trying to, like, for lack of a better term, like starve people out and make people so desperate for work they're willing to work for them anyway.
And that's the issue with companies of that scale, especially when you were talking about like a large buyout, you know, just as an example. And that may be like a high-end example, but I mean, even if someone were to come up to me and offer me $10,000 up front, I mean, that for somebody like me, that's life-changing money for most folks. But for a company like, just examples, Blizzard, Google, these massive corporations that are kind of at the forefront of technology and in turn generative AI, it's pennies to the dollar. And when you talk about ethical usage and ethical bargaining, I think that, you know, hopefully people can see and hear that and realize that that's not ethical. It's a buyout of, you know, people who need the money from folks who don't need the money but need the work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so
exactly.
you had mentioned, leading into the next question, talking about commercials and commercial use. So outside of video games, what else is impacted? Do we have animation, television, like corporate learnings, commercials, stuff like that? You know, is everything affected, or is this specific to one or two fields?
So this particular strike is specifically for video game voice acting.
Okay.
It includes like mocap and PCAP. So like mocap is like motion capture, like with your bodies, like on like a soundstage. PCAP is like your face and capturing performance of your face for a video game. It's basically those three things. Voiceover, mocap, PCAP is what this.
Yeah, I didn't know that, like, you know, motion capture and everything like that was included as well, but that makes great sense given especially like the pace at which generative AI is growing and developing. Like that seems like a vital thing to withhold from the industry if you're worried about losing your job to it.
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure which company said it, but I know at one point, one of the arguments for one or multiple of these main 10 bargaining partners against SAG was, well, once, the motion capture people are acting, but once you, exactly, but once you take the data, like we're not like taking a video of them and putting them in the game. We're taking data points.
Oh.
That were captured. So technically it's not a performance, it's data.
Well, and you could say the same about voices. It's just wavelengths. It's just audio files. And that's not how that works.
No.
That's still someone's likeness. That's still someone's performance.
Right, exactly. Huh. Yep, it's pretty crazy.
Okay.
But yeah, no, this strike is just video games.
And so that's interesting to know as far as, you know, that I refer to it as an AI infestation in media as a whole. So knowing that you probably do voice work outside of just video games or just anime, where else have you experienced that? And are there similar measures to combat it in the other fields, or is it just kind of voiceover as a whole is affected by these specific terms of the strike?
I mean, AI is a concern in, frankly, any portion of the voiceover field. One of the biggest concerns, well, I don't know if you can make anyone concerned the biggest or the smallest. They're all equally valid and scary. But like particularly audiobooks, which is like the field I probably work in the most besides video games.
Really?
Audiobooks are, because it's like usually no like background noise. It's just your voice speaking for like hours and hours and hours. Like that's a lot of data for someone to use to feed to AI to make a model of your voice, which is very scary. And Penguin Random House recently just put in their, you know, when you like open a book and it's got like all the copyright stuff on the very first like beginning page before anything
like
else.
listing the credits.
Yeah. So they have now started adding both digitally and physically that like no portion of any published portion, no part of no part of any published portion or published like format of this work is permitted to be used with generative AI.
Good.
Yeah, which is great. And I actually I was part of a cast audiobook that released at the beginning of October that was done by Penguin Random House. And like, I did not know that was a thing. And then when I like looked up the book to be like, is this out yet? Can I talk about this? Can I go listen to this? I saw that and I was like, that is crazy. Like, I love that.
Yeah, that's just of their own initiative, right? They just did it.
Yeah. So
awesome.
whether there is going to be a strike for commercial stuff, for audiobooks, I don't know. But I really think the interactive video game strike is hopefully going to set some sort of precedent, at least for like character-driven acting in voiceover. So
and I think that at large it probably will set the precedent and set the norm, and then if nothing else it is driving discussion and the way that people view it, which hopefully we're doing the same thing with our audience here on the channel. If anyone's unfamiliar with it, the strike, the terms, everything like that, what are some ways that folks can help? What are some ways that the average Joe, the general consumer like me, what can we do to get involved and help out?
Well, a very basic thing you can do is SAG AFTRA has a like petition that like they have hosted themselves. I don't know exactly how it's being presented, but I think they might like every so often just point to it with like a pointer on the whiteboard to like the bargaining partners being like, by the way, look how many more people have signed this. Anybody can sign that. So I'll give you the link.
Okay, I'll say
because I forgot to give it to you.
That's right. Yeah, any resources we have, viewers, feel free to check out the video description. Like I said, we're going to put everything down there. If you want to get involved in any way, look there. We'll have all pertinent information that we can. And so you had mentioned talking about the audiobook, checking to see, can I announce this? Can I talk about this? That was going to be my next question is, what impact does this have with actors trying to capitalize on roles? We know that's a very big thing for actors, going to conventions, selling merch, prints, signings, streaming the games that you're a part of. What impact does that have like on you as someone, and maybe we can use Zenless Zone Zero as a fair example, or any other projects you've worked on recently. How has that impacted your ability to market yourself in this role and as that character? Specifically
in the case of ZZZ and Jane, I think I've been very fortunate that there was like, I think like a 10-day window between when I was announced as her and before the strike began. So I did get to talk about it a little bit, which was nice.
Cool.
So I'm very fortunate in that. I know there have been a lot of cases since then where actors like can't really talk about their stuff because of the strike. And there's some stuff that I would love to talk about that like publicly and announce on social media and engage with people about that I can't right now. The thought behind people not talking about projects they've done is this is the main point I want to drive home about like this, I guess, is that this is kind of also getting into another topic a little bit.
Let it bleed.
Which I'm sure, yeah. we're going in. Yes, there are certain studios that have been struck since the beginning of the strike. Absolutely. Those are like, I don't want to say like enemy number one.
Big no-nos. They're big no-nos.
Big no-nos. Exactly. They're big no-nos. Technically, any project right now, working or promoting any project right now that is not under a SAG tiered budget agreement or interim agreement, or there's like a new localization agreement that they just rolled out, which is really cool. But I'm not sure like the terms of it yet. But any video game project that's not signed to one of those three contracts is kind of struck.
Okay.
As well. And that's not just like trying to control what people do and be mean and stuff. It's because anything that's not on those contracts, like, is the wild, wild west.
It could like, be fair game, potentially.
Yeah. Another thing, a lot of companies do have that are like non-union, mostly non-union stuff. They have their own like AI protections baked in, or they've signed. So National Association of Voice Actors, NAVA, which is a separate organization that's advocacy for voice actors, has an AI writer, which is really cool, that non-union projects that aren't signed to a SAG contract before the strike and during as well, that's, we're not going to talk about, it's a whole thing, whole can of worms, could sign and add as an addendum to their contracts to offer AI protections, which is great. However, if that company is non-union and has like NAVA or their own AI protections in their contract, that's great. But there's not much stopping them from violating that and just going, actually, you know what? Never mind.
Oh, because there's essentially not a governing body overseeing it. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, there's not a governing body, and if you were to pursue legal action, it's me, a voice actor on a voice actor payroll against a big company with big lawyers, and I don't.
Yep.
Yeah, that's just going to go how that's going to go. So yeah, with that, the general idea is to bring it all back. Anything that's not under an interim agreement, tiered budget agreement, or the new localization contract is not safe to work, is essentially struck, and it's like promoting those IPs is essentially promoting a company that doesn't care enough to give you protection against AI.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. And that's a shame, just given the reality of the industry that you're in is that like online presence and clout. I don't like the word clout. But effectively marketing yourself and creating a following is a big part of how people land roles. I mean, like people do get cast because they're popular, in addition to, a good audition, a good performance. It does matter, but you have to be able to promote these roles, announce them, be engaged with communities in order to do so. And so that really sucks for folks coming in, and there are people in some of these games who have had like it's a breakout role for them, or it should have been, but they haven't had the opportunity to break out because they're abiding by the strike. They're not crossing the picket line, if that's the right word to use here. And that sucks. That really sucks, especially, again, for me as just a general consumer. I love seeing that stuff. I love celebrating. I love the art of voice acting, and I love the art of video games. So I like to be engaged with seeing somebody make a big announcement, and maybe it's a new actor that I never met. And it's a real bummer to see folks not get the same opportunity that they would have had if this wasn't going on. So that's yet another reason to advocate for this getting resolved and getting it settled for the actors involved. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. People will spin it as, oh, SAG and like actors are being mean. Well, no, we're just not going to promote stuff freely for a company that does not respect us.
Yep, that makes sense. On that note, how do you differentiate between a struck and a non-struck studio? I mean, you mentioned there were some of them right off the rip that kind of essentially caused the issue. So if you're looking for work, and if you're looking for maybe work that you can actively promote, or even if you're just trying to engage with your own community and like do some videos or streaming, anything along those lines, what are tools that someone in your position has to use to differentiate what you can and what you cannot actively use and promote?
It's essentially like the same, like the same situation, like things that aren't on a tiered budget agreement or an interim agreement or the localization one.
Essentially everything you already discussed, you just follow those same guidelines on repeat for every project or media source that you want to use for your own purposes. You just got to follow the same guidelines no matter what the context, right?
Yeah. Basically, that's kind of it. That's it.
Well, that's easy enough. I mean, that's good info. And I think that a lot of folks watching are probably in the same position as me, where I didn't really know a ton about what's going on, the strike, what is and isn't okay leading into this. And so hopefully folks watching have had their eyes open, been able to learn a little bit more about it, what it's going to take to reach a resolution, how long it's been ongoing, and then hopefully, everybody kind of sees what's happening. There is a lot of speculation happening with different projects, different actors, different roles and stuff like that. I think I would like to use, whatever platform I have to just encourage everybody to practice patience, practice kindness. It is poor form to make assumptions about somebody's well-being in their professional life. And I think most people could agree on that. And I think that, Kelsey, you taking time out of your day to come talk with me in my audience about the situation, the reality of it, with no speculation, no guessing, no wondering, just, plain facts as they are and why people in your position are having to do what you have to do. I think that that's going to be great info for folks to get. And gamers, if you have questions about the strike or anything like that, feel free to leave a comment. I will answer as best as I can. We've got oodles of resources in the description down below, ways that you can connect with Kelsey. Again, Kelsey, thanks for coming on and talking with us about this. And is there anything else you want to bring up or touch base on before we bid farewell?
Yes, you may have heard non-union projects are not struck. Not officially, but they are not safe to work right now. So even though some people may be like, oh, it's non-struck, fair game, because I'm not a member of SAG. You can work on those, but very much at your own risk. And the only reason, essentially, that SAG is not striking all work, including non-union stuff, is because non-union is not union. They don't have legal jurisdiction over something that's not union. So they can't, as far as I know, this is my words, not SAG's. They can't officially just be like, you can't do that thing that we have no jurisdiction over.
Right. That makes sense.
But but essentially it's like, technically, like I've been saying, all work that's not on one of those 3 contracts, maybe wait on it.
Yeah. So effectively, what people may or may not do is they could be crossing a line that's part of the conversation regarding AI and its use. And so if you go to a non-union studio or non-union project that is indie, you are potentially still endangering not only yourself, but you are possibly feeding into a precedent that says that we're okay with doing this as long as the union isn't involved. Is that about correct, how we need to look at that?
Yeah, and basically there are 1,000 asterisks, like very small ones.
Yeah.
Like this is basically like, yes, correct. But like
unless
like 8,000 like teeny tiny asterisks that like, unless you are doing this professionally, trying to do this professionally, won't really matter.
Right. That's what I was going to say. This is probably minute detail that only matters to people actually signing these contracts and taking this work. For the general consumer, we've pretty much covered everything that folks need to know in as much detail as makes sense, right?
And another thing that people can do to help, in addition to potentially signing that petition, if you think that someone's opinion of like situations online is perhaps speculative at best, I would point you, or if you see people acting in ways that are opposite to what official SAG sources are saying, I implore you to take a look at either SAG or, more specifically, Game Performance Matters, which is like a bunch of SAG negotiating people who have made like their own like social media channels to like put out informational videos.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, it's a little bit like legalese. But I've shared a bunch of their stuff and kind of like explained the gist of what they're saying in like not so like legalese terms. And so have a bunch of other actors. Yeah, I'm glad. So have a bunch of other actors, which is really cool. Before believing any information out there that you're like, where are they getting this information from? Or this seems like a little wild. This seems like, ooh, this is juicy. And they don't have connections in the industry that you know of. Look at official sources first. Look at the Game Performance Matters folks, because they are just giving you the facts.
And something you mentioned,
try to spread that around.
You had mentioned before we started recording that there are instances where NDAs are active and speculation may happen regarding a performer or a project, and they can't do anything about it because of the NDA. And I know that I've been guilty of speculating what happened, especially when all this first started happening and word of like this massive strike hadn't really spread to everybody yet. To your point, there's a line between speculating and concern and just spreading rumors. And I would do the same thing, just encourage folks to double check the info that you're being fed, because it may or may not be accurate, and never use, silence as cause to justify it, because a lot of times in the industry, silence is because of an NDA and they can't break that silence, right?
Yeah, the reason that you're not hearing a lot of like active updates about what's going on behind the scenes with like this project or that project, or like how are the negotiations going, like have any of the companies, a lot of times most people don't know or are under NDA and just like can't talk about it. So the silence doesn't mean things aren't going on. They are going on. It just can't be shared.
That makes sense.
Patience. It will all hopefully work out.
It will eventually. It will eventually. And I would like to just say thank you for coming on the channel and talking about it. And I'd like to encourage you and your peers. You got folks like me and everyone watching this video big supporters of the industry as a whole. We want to see you guys succeed. We want to see a good agreement that protects you, your intellectual rights, your voice, everything related to it. So good luck to all the voice actors involved. Kelsey, thank you for coming on. And I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Woo. Bye.
All right, gamers, and that's a wrap. Thank you, Kelsey, for joining us. Be sure to follow them on social media. We've got lots of links to stuff down below, like we've mentioned several times. Please take a moment to educate and inform yourself. If you're concerned about generative AI and the effect that it is having on the entertainment industry as a whole, I'd encourage you to share this video with your friends and other folks who share the same concern, or maybe even folks who aren't concerned about it but should be concerned about it. We wanted to raise a lot of awareness for the situation, set the record straight on a few items, and hopefully we did a good job of doing that. Thank you again, Kelsey, for joining us, and thank you all for watching and help raise awareness for this great cause and this great conversation that is impacting a lot of people in really big ways. In the meantime, I'll see you on the next video. Love the games, love yourself, and I love you. Bye.